Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Should I just run through all the slides?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I think as we discussed, I was looking to evaluate the nature-based solutions and in terms of what's up, especially with respect to floods and what is the role nature-based solutions has in efficiency. The reason for this being, again, I think floods are one of the most common natural disasters that accounts for 44% of all disasters. It is a huge part of the climate adaptation strategy in Paris Agreement. And sea level rise affects 300 million people globally as per as 2015. And again, there's a equation of climate justice in this because most marginalized people and urban poor are the most affected by, like any other disaster, even for floods. And according to many literature, I think effective flood measures can reduce not just fatalities, but also economic damages if a city invests in flood resilience policies. So again, just to go through what I think is the problem statement is, I think flooding is a global challenge. And now with the current climate change, it increases both socioeconomic, it increases the impact of it in multiple levels. And while we have traditional solutions like embankments and dikes, they often have more long-term effect because they disrupt the ecosystem and have higher cost on ecology. And for example, they increase like downstream flooding. Also, they require a lot of maintenance and they are expensive over the long term. And they have, of course, most of these projects end up displacing a lot of communities who stay around those areas. Nature-based solutions are supposed to help enhancing the resilience as well as provide biodiversity benefits. However, integrating NPS in India and internationally, so even now is kind of scattered and is inconsistent. So I was hoping to look into that and see if we can form a comprehensive report to understand what are the limitations that we're facing right now. So my research objectives were to understand the effectiveness of NPS in mitigating flood risks, to understand the policy gaps and challenges, and so as per your recommendation, to understand the constraints and potential of people-centric NPS, like what is the role, how do people's needs and local priorities shape NPS design, for which the methodologies were largely literature, just mixed methods, but largely secondary data and comparative analysis of different case studies. So NPS, just to give a sense, NPS means nature-based solutions, which are strategies that uses natural processes or ecosystem to address societal challenges such as climate change, water management, disaster risk, or its security. But it also it's more holistic and it hopes to provide benefits for both people and biodiversity. And just these are not all of it, but these are just a few of NPS solutions when it comes to floods, from mangrove restoration to riverbank stabilization, and a few others. Again, nature-based solutions, I think, have a lot of outcomes. Ecologically, it helps in biodiversity and carbon storage and water regulation. Socially, it's supposed to help with the health of the community and help the community to be empowered. And economically, if done well, it can help in creating new jobs and improving health and sustainability of the community. So, what I've done so far is I've taken like a couple of case studies across, few in India and few globally, to understand the difference in approaches of NPS from both policy level. And I think all these 5 case studies have different angles. Like some of them are more bottoms up, more decentralized. Some have been very top up, and some have been very successfully implemented in policies. But in long term, they have had challenges. So I was hoping to go ahead with this by understanding these case studies and further analyzing what are the gaps in the policies. Right. So far, I think just a brief thing is they've tried up common points, but in terms of NPS, definitely require collaboration from all the levels of the government. Like while some of the models that was done in Kerala is very local, but they don't have a lot of power and autonomy because they don't have a national implementation. So for a successful implementation of NPS, it's crucial to have collaboration between all the levels. Netherlands IMPRI program has done this beautifully, like by addressing all tiers of the government. But at the same time, they also have their own challenges because they don't have a lot of local participation. The second constraint is institutional flexibility. NPS, because we're talking about real world, it continuously needs to be evolved and adapted to the climate change or what are the stressors at that moment. So another shortage or the barrier was the lack of institutional flexibility to evolve a design of NPS. The other thing was the importance of decentralized plan, especially the most successful NPS has been more locally led, where the local communities have more autonomy and collaboratively designed the models they wanted. Then while local intervention is crucial and inclusion is crucial, there's also importance of regulatory supports and policy mandates to mainstream the idea of NPS. And again, of course, stakeholder participation. Right. I think these are, it's similar, but again, the policy, sorry, give me a second. Yeah, I think so far what I can understand as the mainstream barriers to NPS was, again, as mentioned, the policy and institutional barriers. Also, because it's not mainstream yet, there are a lot of financial constraints in implementing NPS, and because NPS is not very visible, like how you say an embankment is, there's a lack of funding sources for it. Again, NPS needs to be regional specific, so there's a lot of limitation in the knowledge, because even now we have a mangrove afforestation project, and it's seen as a global one-all solution, which doesn't work. It needs to be more regional and specific, because there are a lot of complexities in each local communities. Then we have barriers such as social and cultural constraints, because again, we don't have lack of skilled engineers who I think we are still in the process of learning how to do this. And again, this also has a risk of, like everything else, community exclusion, because there's always a hierarchy in different communities. So it's important to design it in a way it's participatory and inclusive. Right. So these are a couple of examples based on case studies on how the local priorities are crucial to shape NPS. In terms of India, NPS is very, very context heavy. For example, NPS, the flood mitigation strategies that was implemented in Assam did help. It was not just about floods, it also helped in improving the livelihood of the community. It's important that the design reflects local knowledge. So one of the projects I was doing with Econometrics in Kochi. So Kochi right now, tidal flooding is getting accepted as a prominent natural disaster. So what this organization or what we used to try to do was understand. So Kochi in this Panchayat Erikara, there is Pukali farming, which is rice tolerant farming. Flood tolerant rice. So there is an equation in the ecosystem where there are few months of the year where you have the rice, and then as soon as the season is over, then you do prawn cultivation. So there is a balance and there's a seasonality to understand the ecosystem and how the community used to mitigate floods in each of these places. So it's important to include communities to understand how, because when you're looking at a top-down or just a community-based approach, you often fail to understand the nuances of the community. It's also important to consider the ownership of the community, their spiritual values, their safety, which like in places in Kerala and Sundarbans, there's a lot of cultural nuances to it when it comes to like any of the land and common properties. Yeah, and again, I think equity and inclusion is a huge part of everything similar to this, because even when you're talking about a local community, that's again marginalized groups in every community, just so to ensure that everyone is included, so everyone's voices are heard, because it's an issue that affects everyone, and everyone will have their own knowledge. Yeah, that's the extent to which I have for now.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Anjali, for your presentation. It's a nice one, and it's a more or less well thought out, like as I mentioned in my initial comments. And I think you have first-hand experience of doing this at Cochina. So the experiences that you are sharing. So you are working in Kochi. That's what you are saying.
No, I'm not working in Kochi, but I was involved in the project on mapping, spatially analyzing the tidal flooding in Kochi.
Okay. No, that is fine. Then, as far as the approach is concerned, now since you have some experience of this in coaching base, then if it is possible for you to deep dive into some of the aspects which you are mentioning, because, for example, while capturing the social or economic aspect, you are talking about inclusion, or in case of economic thing, you are you are actually talking about the creation of new jobs, health, and all those things. Okay. So especially in the context of Kochi, how these adoption of nature-based solutions are actually facilitating this kind of, or hindering this kind of inclusion, or this prospect of new economic job creation or health, if it can be shown in a much more comprehensive, concrete way, that would actually add some value to your entire research work. So that is what I think. And another thing is that you are talking, or you are emphasizing on this decentralization approach, much more that top-down, not top-down approach, rather bottom-up approach. That's what one of your takeaways. Now, because it is actually facilitating local innovation, you were talking about this flood-tolerant rice, and it's shifting towards the prawn cultivation and all these things. But at the same time, this is based in Kochi. So if it is possible for you to explore, like, to what extent this kind of practices are replicable at the for the other cities, and so if it is possible, because I understand that all the cities, they are vastly different in not only in terms of their in terms of their socioeconomic, cultural factors, which you are already mentioning, but also in terms of their severity of their exposure to the climate risk, or so they are different. So definitely it is not as such. It is not always advisable to strictly compare and contrast all these countries. It's still possible, but the thing is that, but still we can always make this analysis, perform this analysis in a comparative framework in order to draw some lessons, and that's what basically your idea of choosing Netherlands, China, and EU countries. But again, at that particular point of time, the choices are good. But at least if you can like justify your selection of Kerala and Sundarban, as well as this, Kerala, this Netherlands, China, and EU, in terms of, the gravity of the problem, in terms of the institutional structure, because, like what we can learn as far as the institutional structure is concerned, what we can learn from the, say, I am assuming that the Netherlands experiences have been successful. So if that is the case, then what kind of institutional structure, as far as the institutional structuring is concerned, so what our cities, our areas can learn from them. Okay, so if you can specifically mention all these things, because since your entire thing is more or less well specified, so if you can throw some more light into it, then it will be easier for us to understand a lot more about this nature-based solution, because it is basically the in thing, like we have to think about all these things, and as you mentioned, the challenges of adoption and applicability to nature-based solution is the site-specific nature of the problems. That is the biggest problem. Okay, so the problem that we even I think it is not strictly comparable, the Kochi experience with the Sundarban experience, because of the cultural difference. Because why I'm saying Sundarban, because I have some idea about the Sundarbans, although I'm not that much familiar with Kochi. But that point is very interesting, like how they are at the local level, they are actually moving from this flood tolerant rice to the prawn cultivation. Because in that sense, they are also like through the adoption of this kind of nature-based solution, it will also have some significant implications for the livelihood challenges. Okay, because when they are shifting, Okay, so it is also having some important implications or for as far as the income generating activities are concerned. So these are some of the insights which you can also bring into your analysis just to make it more compelling, more interesting in nature. So anyways, these are some of my observations. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. And Miss Seema, if you're ready.
Hello.
Hello.
Am I audible?
Yes. You are audible, yeah.
Can I share my screen, sir?
Yeah, please.
My screen is visible. Can I begin, sir?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to present today about ESG. Now, to begin with, all of us know what sustainability is. Actually, sustainability is an umbrella, which means that we optimize or use the resources in such a way that we save for our future generation. Sustainability as an umbrella or concept can be applied to all perspectives of life. In terms of industry, when we are speaking sustainability, when we give it guidelines or a framework, so it is termed as ESG. So I'm going to talk about ESG regulatory frameworks in global and Indian context. So when I say ESG, the full form of ESG is environmental, social, and governance, where E or the environmental pillar will take care of various environmental parameters like climate change, biodiversity, water, energy efficiency, carbon intensity. Social is related to various social parameters for all the stakeholders like equal opportunities, their rights, labor, everything. And G stands for the governance. That is the what is the configuration of the board of governance, decision making, and all those things. So these are the three basic pillars based on which the guidelines or frameworks are presented. So when I'm talking of a ESG framework or reporting, this is the flowchart. First, the strategy is aligned. Then there are various frameworks I'll show in the next slide. Meeting with the stakeholders is done. Impact planning is done. Materiality assessment is nothing but out of the various parameters I've shown in the earlier slide, which ones are important depending on the category of industry, goal setting for it, and then measurement and reporting. So the frameworks and standards which I mentioned, these are the various frameworks and standards which are adopted globally. Now, when I say the word framework and standard, the difference is framework is the broad guideline. Like if we have heard of GRI, TCFD, they are the broad guidelines, whereas standard is very specific. It will give the matrix or question answers in what format the reporting has been done. And for both the cases, there are various rating agencies like Dow Jones or MCSI, which will give rating to that standard or framework or the reporting which has been done. So in my case, the objectives are to analyze the different ESG frameworks which exist across the globe. Actually, there are various, but I am planning to study 4 or 5. I have completed 2 by now. To understand the global scenario and to understand the Indian perspective and how we can correlate them. So the scope, as I said, the various ESG framework, what 5 I have targeted are: one is GRE, which is globally GRI framework, which is globally accepted, SESB, which is originated in US, SBTI, which is used in UK, IRFS, which is European Union, and TCFD, which is limited to climate change and is used universally. So currently I am thinking of these 5 global standards, and the 6th, as I said, in case of Indian context, it is BRSR. Okay, so studying the various international frameworks, then understanding the ESG reporting in India. Now, why I have taken up this study is there is no one global framework. So how we can map these various ESG parameters and we can integrate, or we can have an integrated framework which can be useful. For different countries, like if we can have an integrated framework. Now, the 2 which I have studied, I told the first is GRI. So this is how the GRI has come. It started in 97 and currently the new sector was launched. So as of now, this is the most universally accepted ESG framework. This is how the GRI standards are. This first one is the universal standards, which is the requirement of the industry, its disclosure, and the materiality topics. Materiality, as I said, are the parameters which are important with reference to the industry. So if I'm talking of a coal industry, so energy, it is an energy intensive industry. So energy will be one of the crucial parameters. So how to select those materiality topics? Then, as I said, sector, depending on the type of industry, there are various sector standards what they've given, and topic standard is for all. In next slide, I will show what are the topic standards. So as I said, there are 3 umbrellas. One is environmental, social, and this is economic or governance. So these are the parameters which are important as per GRI. Now, similarly, the second standard which I said is SESB, which is currently used in US. These are the parameters under environment, governance, and social. So with reference to different standards, there are different parameters. So this is one mapping which I've tried to do, but I want to have this kind of correlation for all the 5 global frameworks as well as the BRSR. Now, if we come to BRSR, this is how BRSR has evaluated in our country. It began in 2009, and currently, as 2023, top 1,000 Indian BSE listed companies are required to do their reporting in the form of BRSR. But what problem the companies are facing over here is, if they have their existence in other countries other than India, they have to use 2 or 3 standards. So that is what makes the system very complex. Like they are doing BRSR also, and if their presence is at somewhere else, they are adopting SESB also, GRI also. So that makes the system complex. So why I have taken up this study is, if we can come with any integrated framework, so it becomes simplified for the industry to represent their sustainability data or their ESG reporting. So this is how the BRSR reporting is done. It has 3 sections. Section A is disclosure. Section B is about the management. And Section C, this is principle wise, where the information about environment, social, and governance is given. Questions are there, about 94 questions are there for the 3 sections, and the industry has to answer that. So this is something what I am willing to have, like under environment pillar, social and governance pillar, but an integrated framework like this, considering the 5 global and 1 Indian ESG reporting framework. And these are my references. So this is something I have not completed. I've just studied about 2 global frameworks and somewhat about Indian framework, but I want to have an integrated framework for all the 5 or 6.
Okay, thank you, Seemaji. Yes, it's a nice presentation, first of all. So I can understand your objective and the approaches that you are considering. And one thing is that what you are saying, like what I want to know, because since I'm not that much familiar with all these ESG framework and the pillars that you are talking about, are there any commonalities in these ESG global standards? Or like how it is different from the Indian standards, the BRSR framework that you were talking about. So,
Yeah.
So to what extent they are different?
Sir, like the common umbrella is same, like environment pillar is there, but under environment, the sub parameters or the important.
Do they differ in terms of sub parameters?
Yes, sir, they do differ. Like in some of the parameters, carbon footprint is given more preference, and somewhere climate change is given. So that I wanted to rank in based of hierarchy. I wanted your guidance in that. How do I do that?
What kind of data that you have?
Sir, I have the detailed framework for each, and like if there is environmental pillar, how many parameters are there? One thing is, if I am including more than 1 sectors, then it becomes a very complex system. So I am willing to say stick to 1 sector, like because all these frameworks are again sector wise, like thermal power plants are there or service industries are there, then it becomes a very complex scenario. So I am planning to select 1 complex sector which will cover most of the parameters. So say if I say thermal power plant. So now in thermal power plant, if I take GRI under environment, so there are 10 parameters. But in that case, in that 10, the hierarchy what they have given. So for them, carbon footprint or renewable energy is most important. So if I go to SBTI, in that case, decarbonization. So I want to establish a hierarchy, like which is the most important parameter when and we have an integrated framework like this, what I'm showing on the slide, which shows like how to have an integrated framework when I have to prepare an ESG report. Otherwise,
Okay.
I have to refer those 5 standards each time I'm doing the reporting.
No, what I understand from your approach is that, so in that case, what you can do, since you are trying to focus only one particular sector, which is again quite
Yes.
understandable, which is quite understandable. Then, for example, you are talking about the thermal power sector. Okay, so in that context, why don't you think about the prospects and problems of the challenges which the thermal sector this particular sector is facing in the Indian context, and then try to align the indicators which are there across these 5. You are talking about 5 standard global standards. So why don't you think of incorporating those 5 indicators, the parameters which are most important for them into the Indian context? That can be one approach which you can do. But again, having said that, it may not be possible or like it may not be useful for as far as the ESG framework is concerned for any other countries, because, and that's why I think there is this prevalence of 5 different global standards, because as such, in terms of the challenges, in terms of the problems that these different sectors are facing, they are not strictly comparable, and that is why it is not possible for it is not there in the existing literature to come up with some kind of common framework, some kind of common standardized framework which can be accepted at the global level. So in that case, what you can do, you can actually, like drawing on from all those 4 global standards, you can suggest some framework, some pillars which can be useful specifically in the context of Indian scenario. For example, is it possible for you to make certain kind of rethinking on this BRSR framework? Because I think BRSR framework is prevalent in India.
Yes, Indian.
So if BRSR framework is prevalent in the Indian context, then to what extent, drawing on from the lessons from the other 5 global standard indicators, what are the different parameters which can be incorporated into this BRSR framework to make it to further streamline it, so that it can actually have some specific implications for the sustainability, as far as the sustainability is concerned. So this is one way through which you can approach your problem. That is
Got your point.
Yes.
Okay, got your points.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Pushkarji, if you're ready, we can go ahead with your presentation. Anilaji, if you would like to go ahead, if Pushkarji is not ready.
Hi Priyanka, I'm not yet done with the presentation and all. I would like to give it the presentation on May 3rd.
Okay. I'll just wait a couple of minutes for Pushkarji because he gave his name.
Sure. And also he has shared one write-up with us.
Yes.
That contains some of the works which he has already done. So yeah, we can wait.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. Sorry for the wait. Like I had an exam.
Okay, good afternoon. Yes.
Yeah.
So will you be able to present
Yeah. I just
or
came up.
discuss? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, sure.
I just made a small presentation. It's not very
Sure,
indeed.
sure. Yeah, fine. Please go ahead.
I'm really, really sorry for the delay. It's like the laptop was not letting me share the screen.
Okay, please take your time.
Sorry, I'm really, really sorry about this. Yeah, I hope it's visible.
Yeah.
It's visible, right?
Please.
Yeah, so as I've discussed before, we had a small discussion, right? Like I would like to analyze the municipal finance as part of my thing. So I've been working on it, like, so I was trying to find the data set. Right now I'm working on the data set itself, and it's taking a little time for me to find the data set, but I could, whatever from the secondary data, what was available on the site, I could find something and I could make some sense out of it when I submitted the abstract. So when I talk about the introduction, as it's known, like urban bodies are facing rising financial obligations and urbanization, especially now, because right now public-private partnership has been previously PPI was the major source of investment or anything into the urban bodies and all. Now the face has changed. Now the PPIs and the most of the PPIs have not been successful, especially in the metro projects across India. Like if we take for example Hyderabad itself. So we are now in the era of where we are trying to raise finance uh, from the urban capacity. So there's a lot of funding challenge as a result of this. So that's the reason. Then that's where municipal bonds have come into place. Like the sorry, I'll just switch on the video. So we have come to market-based financing. Now cities are urged to use municipal bonds to diversify funding sources, and so in the recent latest budget in 2025, the government has announced urban challenge fund of 1 lakh crore, where it's been diversified across 3 cities like Varanasi, Vizag, and Indore. And in this reason, Vizag is one of the city where there's a lot of scope for growth. So I've chosen Vizag as city to understand where urban challenge fund can be utilized very well for financing the projects, and 50% of the fund for there would be getting from the urban from the municipal bonds is one of the option. So research rationale why I have chosen Vizag is like, so currently I'm mentored. One of the major reasons is like to get a proper data set and all. Currently I'm right now mentored by the Vizag sitting MP, Bharat Matmakalli. So with the help of him, I'm able to. He's someone who is really really working on it and all. And apart from that is from my personal view, but there's a lot of greater significance to the city of Vizag right now. Recently, if you have heard about the news where Vizag has been granted land for lease for Infosys to come up and set up their IT park, and it's a growing city. It's like an emerging, and it's already a well-placed city and a well urban planned city because of being majorly an industrial and Navy. It's also called the Western Command Center for India from the Navy also, and it's a city that's already there. But however, there's a major challenge of internal revenue generation there, and there's a lot of constraint due to this because of the changing governments and everything. There's not been a stability in proper seeing the revenue generation there, like how we can. So once if we try to set that revenue generation part in a proper manner, like then it has a very strong growth for the city in a sense. It sets up a really good base. So there's a need for comprehensive evaluation of GVMC's, the Greater Visakhapatnam Municipal Corporation's fiscal and institutional readiness is essential in this case. So, so my research objectives were about analyzing the GVMC's fiscal health over the last 10 years, because 5 years was run by the different government was there before this previous 5 years. So in order to understand that ups and downs clearly, the graph where the fiscal health deteriorated or the financial performance was good and all, assessing the governance and institutional capacity where this could be done by the qualitative measures, but this is something I'm really working out on right now to get a proper source to get a qualitative thing. And then so Pune, Ahmedabad, and Indore have already been the cities that have pioneered in the municipal bonds, but it's not been a heavy successful case. But Ahmedabad was quite successful in that. Having a comparison study on how Visakhapatnam can be learning from their stories, and then evaluate compliance with SEBI rules and market norms, and determine eligibility for urban challenge fund, how valid it can be used for in urban challenge fund, and recommend reforms for credit worthiness and autonomy. So the conceptual framework, what I believe here in this is that for to have a strong municipal health, when I analyze and all, would be financial soundness, where I would be looking over the operating ratio and debt service coverage and reliance on own source revenue from the public finance lens. So in order to understand the what the numbers say about the city's financial and then the institutional capacity, the how the municipal this would include on the reading the geos and all over the years, like over the 5-6 years on development aspect. Like for example, Vizag was the previous government, they have called it as like the fintech capital, and they were trying to get a lot of fintech companies into Vizag and financial innovation companies. Now even the government is trying to work, the current government also is trying to work on. So this governance quality here includes, and Vizag is one of the city that has utilized the concept of e-governance from its early stages to understand how well I would be. I'm thinking of applying the design thinking in trying to understand it, and then finally giving a credit worthiness of how is the risk profile, seeing the municipal health, and then credit ratings and the debt management. So my methodology would include the quantitative methods would be including financial ratio calculations, benchmarking analysis, and credit rating simulations, which are based on the SEBI credit rating simulations would be based on CRISL, and then the benchmarking analysis is based on the SEBI's methodology and all. And coming to the qualitative method, it could include stakeholder interviews and focus groups, and then institutional governance review. One of the stakeholder interview I've already held is by the MP itself, and then I'm trying to now get in contact with GVMC commissioner too in this case, and then policy analysis in an overall sense would including the assessing the SEBI regulations and urban challenge fund criteria, and smart cities and Amrut tools. Smart cities also we can see. I would be analyzing the rankings over the years, like on different basis on what smart cities have ranked over the years, and Amrut rankings also would be looked into on trying to analyze where the Vizag could sit off. So as of now, when I've seen the lot of secondary data and whatever I could find is that coming to Vizag, the own source revenue of its coming revenue from its own municipal revenues, it's 45% more than the total revenue. I've compared national average here. I've compared it with the top 4 metros like the Bangalore and Mumbai and Delhi and Kolkata. These 4 metros have I try to understand where Vizag tries to fit in, and then it seems to see the show that, and also Vizag is one of the city where the per capita income is quite high. That's also one of the factor that could be seen in to understand why the revenues and property tax efficiency. The property tax is quite well collected here, and due to as I said, the PCI is very great, and also on top of that, having a massive government institutions within the city, there's a standard of living that lets you spend more and lets you have a high expenditure and all. Revenue expenditure constitutes 65% of the budget, yes. And then debt status, low debt but lacks formal debt policy and management cell. This is because Vizag has always been in the tier 2 city and all, and it was majorly not concentrated on improving. When I've seen the CRISL rating and the thing, their credit rating stands at 8A already, indicating good credit quality. So institution and governance findings. So there would be project execution, and then whatever till now, whatever I could see from secondary data, this was something I've seen. So Isaac has always been on the top rankings for the smart city mission, especially in the cleanliness index and all. And there's also this thing that the staff is there's a lot of shortage in staff, and smart city SPV. There are a lot of SPVs in the city itself. Getting one of the SPV recently that have got into play is the metro rail project that Vizag is plying on to look for. But there has been a limited impact. There have been like the SPVs have been done, the DPRs have been issued, but nothing beyond that going. So it's like the pilot project sitting ready to get things done. So governance and transparency was like, as I said, digital governance exists, but participatory and procurement transparency is weak. Again, it's because of its being a tier 2 city and uh, less citizen engagement in a way, like where the high per capita income, there has been very less participatory and procurement transparency in this case. So barriers to bond market entry. So as GIS is something that is trying to come now, it's important now we can try to inculcate GIS to understand where and to understand the property tax accuracy and assessment, and then depth and project management. So when we compare it with Ahmedabad and all the cities like other depth, they'll have a lot of ring facing projects or dedicated depth service mechanisms. This is something that can be looked upon to create it to enter into the bond market. And credit enhancements. Absence of partnerships with development financial institutions like ADB or World Bank, like there has been much not, as I've told, they are very low in depth, but they haven't even taken much of depth also in this place, like to enhance the credit, like the repayment and all. So when I talk about urban challenge fund assessment, when the basic can be done from that. So the strengths would be like strong, as I said, the strong digital governance they have, like the one of the cities that e-governance was like smart governance that Andhra government says has been inculcated in Vizag, and lot of urban innovation initiatives like they have a lot of land on the sea facing, and like for this so Vizag is one of the cities that also have a blue flag beach. That's very rarity on the on the beaches of the Western India to get a blue flag beach. So they have a lot of scope for the tourism and the innovation sector, for the finance and the other. Uh, so it's also called as the Caribbean of the West, Caribbean of the East, Vizag, because it's a city that is chiseled in between the hills and the sea. So the weakness, as I said, because of being in a earthquake prone area, heavy earth, there's a greater need of climate adaptation tools, and slum inclusion and fiscal decentralization is something that has to be looked upon. Comparative insights across the cities. When we see what Pune, Ahmedabad, Indore, when I've seen, there are already strong credit ratings and GIS tax mapping systems that have been into place, and ring-fenced projects for funds. These are something that became a pillar for the growth in the long run for the municipal bonds. But when it comes to Vizag, it has a lot of lags in enabling this infrastructure. Well, they have pioneered in the smart governance and all this aspect. Now the GIS and all could be very crucial in helping into build the credit worthy. And then there is high growth potential as a result of all of this. Strategic reform roadmap, as I've already told, it's like financial reforms, institutional reforms, and bond readiness and governance. So to conclude, Vizag's part to leadership, Vizag is poised for urban finance leadership, and then overcoming structural bottlenecks is crucial. And finally, proposal supports national sustainable finance discourse, and that could be quite helpful in this case. So till now, whatever references and key sources I've seen, was completely a secondary data like Amrut Reform scorecards from the MOHUA website I've been seeing, Municipal Performance Index, SEBI regulations, and World Bank Urban Governance Diagnostic. This is something I'm still trying to read upon the World Bank, and then GVMC budgets. And this, when I talk about the GVMC budgets and the audit reports, this itself is getting little taking time for me to get a data on it. there's a lot of not it on the web. So GVMC budget and audit I'm trying to get it through my mentor. And then smart city mission toolkits, which are already available in the website. Chalo, that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Pushkar, for your presentation. So it's more or less finely chalked out proposal. And now I have a couple of comments. Okay, the first thing is that here you are mentioning that you also want to include not only the municipal bond aspect, but also for the urban challenge part. Okay. So my suggestion is to you please stick only to the municipal bond part, because like if you can take care of the municipal bond part, then it will automatically address the challenges for accessing the urban challenge part, because one of the main conditionalities for accessing urban challenge fund is that they have to somehow generate resources via accessing the municipal bond market or via going for some kind of PPP mode of projects. Okay. Now, whether the Vizag municipality or municipal corporation will be in a position to take benefit of this municipal bond and PPP, this will be based on certain crucial factors. And as you are correctly mentioning, that you will be going to analyze the financial health of Vizag Municipal Corporation, and from there you can have some idea like to what extent they are in a position to access the municipal bond. So that is basically your idea. Okay. Now here I have a couple of observations. So here you better the secondary sources that you have mentioned. Okay, that will not give you much information now, since you are focusing only on one particular city. So I think you please go for that audited reports. In some cases, I'm not sure about the Vizag Municipal Corporation. In some cases, the city corporations, they have their own websites, and there they put their annual reports, financial report, annual budgets. They generally put up. So if it is available, I'm not sure about the GVMC. If they are available, you can have an idea. And one thing that when you will be going for this kind of 10-year analysis now, the biggest problem with municipal finance is the lack of standardization. So that is one problem that you are going to face, because you will see that, say, in 2015, the different heads under which the receipts and expenditures are reported, so that head may change in 2021 or in 2020. I'm not sure about the GVMC, but these are the most common thing. Like if you see the reports which have been published by Praja is a leading think tank. So if you see their report, then you will get an idea about the kind of problem of accounting that they faced while collecting the data. So a lot of standardization you may require. So that is one thing. Second important thing is that you are doing analysis for 10 years data. So your analysis should be based on some kind of real figures, okay, not the nominal figures. So you have to somehow adjust the figures with some indicators or something like that. Okay. Second, my next comment is that you are actually trying to benchmark Vizag with respect to the other Indian cities, and you mentioned about Pune, Ahmedabad, and Indore. Okay. But as far as the financial health is concerned, it is generally, we are seeing that the bigger cities, they're in a much better position to access the municipal bond fund, because the level of economic activities are much higher in those bigger cities. So maybe you can definitely take the lessons from these cities that you are mentioning, but better would be to compare the Vizag experience with the cities of similar sizes. Like if you can.
Indore, that's why I put up Indore actually, Pune, Ahmedabad, and Indore.
Indore, okay. But I'm not sure like to what extent Indore has been successful in floating the bonds. Okay, because
bonds, yeah.
Because you are talking about the ring fencing and all these things, but ring fencing is the basic thing for accessing municipal bond market. Okay, and next important thing is that when you are talking about the financial health, you are talking about many indicators: the operating ratio, debt service coverage ratio, own source revenue. But apart from that, there are many other indicators which you can look at. For example, very important to look at the contribution of tax revenue and non-tax revenue. You can take you from Hyderabad, because Hyderabad has introduced quite a number of interesting non-tax revenue instruments, which actually has contributed to their improvement in revenue generation. So you can take a cue from there. And this and that, and even if you look at the municipalities all across India, of late there has been some resurgence in non-tax revenue generation capacity of the municipality. So apart from this, I would also suggest you to look at the tax revenue, non-tax revenue. Of course, you'll be looking at the property tax. You can look at the grant component, because at the end of the day, grant is playing a significant role in the municipal finance. So you have to take care of that also. And then you are talking about, well, apart from this, whenever you are talking about this municipal bond, I suggest you to strongly, like when you are trying to benchmarking the GBMC's experience, so why don't you benchmark it to the other world cities which have been successful in generating or in floating the municipal bond? Okay, because for example, US is the classic example. Okay, but from there we can take a very good lesson, and the lesson is that if you look at the success story of municipal bond market, there are two crucial reasons for success of municipal bond market. One is the user charges that they are applying, and the proceeds from those user charges are more than sufficient to cover the bond obligations, the bond repayment obligations in the US. Okay, so that is one of the important factor, which is hardly not the case in the context of India, and that is why I'm trying to focus more on the revenue generation capacity through non-tax sources. This is very important, okay, because that is one of the key to the success of US bonds too. Second important factor of successful experience of US bond is the amount of trust that the people place on the local government, because it's all about why you will purchase municipal bond, because you expect your municipal corporation to repay you after 5-year period or 8-year period or 10-year period. Okay, but if you are not trusting your municipality, okay, then definitely you're not going to purchase your bond. As simple as that. Okay. Now you are talking about, for example, you during your presentation you talk about that. Okay, Vizag has very high standard of living, high SLI that you mentioned. Okay, I understand, but this high SLI does not necessarily lead to people to pay taxes for the municipality. There is no correlation into it. Okay, so that is why it is very much important for you to understand the service delivery aspect. People will pay taxes only if they expect that what they are paying, they are getting back in terms of improvement in service delivery. And that will also help to build the trust of the people on their municipal corporation, which will be helpful for them to access the municipal bond market. So these are some of the things which I think you need to incorporate into your analysis. Okay, and also it is related to the transparency, because you also mentioned about transparency. Okay, fiscal transparency and all these things. Now we will see, like in CRISIL or in other standard credit rating agencies standard framework, you will see many indicators are there which are used to capture that that financial transparency part. Okay, but when all these things are fine, but unless and until you are transparent to the people will not trust you. So somehow you need to relate about or rather you need to examine to what extent the indicators which these credit rating agencies have been using are reflecting of the trust that the people are going to place on the municipal corporation. So this will be an interesting intervention from your part, because otherwise what is happening is that now you will be following your CRISIL or ICRA standard set of indicators, and then you will be evaluating what is the status of GBMC in the context in terms of all those indicators, and then you will be concluding that okay, GBMC can be credit rating A minus, A plus, and all those things. But then you are not contributing enough to the literature in that particular sense, because then any credit rating agency will do that.
Yeah.
So you can think of like to what extent they can be some way reflect to the trust of people, which is very important for facilitating this entire strengthening of municipal bond market. So these are some of the aspects I think which you please look into this, look into these aspects. And also, for example, you about mentioned about the ineffectiveness of SPVs, the special purpose vehicles. Okay, so these are hardly surprising because we all know about the experience of this mass cities mission and all these things. Okay, so and also, what is the scope for participation? You talked about people's participation. Okay,
Yeah,
so
so that's where I think I wanted to like do a correlation between property tax, general tax collection, and the people's per capita income. These three can be correlated and found out.
yes. You
The
can,
trust factor can be found out, right? Like what's
Yes,
the
you
trust factor over
yes.
the years?
Yes, you can do that. But the thing is that again, what I have said, like even if people have high per capita income, they are not going to pay municipal taxes if they are not getting the service from the municipality.
Municipality. Ah,
Just place yourself in your position. Nah.
yeah.
You are earning income. Why? For example, myself, I stay in a particular place where I pay every year municipal taxes, but in my just is a recent experience. My two of my nearby street lights, they are not functioning for the last 2 weeks. I contacted the municipal officials. They are just saying, okay, we will fix it. We will fix it within next 2 days, next 3 days. But that means the payment that I am making is not correlated with the services that I am taking. Okay, so obviously this will incentivize me not to pay taxes in the next quarter. Okay, that is why, in spite of all those GIS mapping and all these things, because GIS mapping is very anything. Okay, you can always use the technology and all these things to, to use GIS mapping to improve the property tax coverage. Okay, but even if you are improving the property tax coverage, it may not necessarily lead to improvement in property tax collection. Okay, so these are some of the things which you need to explore in a greater detail. Since you have access to the GVMC and you have a good mentor, so you just use his contacts to collect more information about GVMC, and it will be a very interesting analysis. So just keep these my suggestions into your mind and do your work.
If the report comes out really well and all, he'll submit it to the cabinet also, because they are personally right now working on the GVMC's growth and the development, and also
Okay, sure, definitely. And also you can also like you can look at or estimate the tax potential, because you are talking about the economic prosperity of GVMC in the recent past. Okay, so how that economic prosperity could contribute to the greater tax generation revenue. See, here also my point is that, for example, you talked about the land-based financing mechanism in the context of Vizag. You talked about there are city beaches and all these things, tourism and all these things. Okay, but again, this is a bit problematic. Please think over it, because even if the tourism is being promoted in Vizag, there is no guarantee that the municipal corporation will be the beneficiary, because I'm not sure whether these tourism related activities, they fall under the municipal corporation's purview or not. So
for the Vizag, it falls
for
under Vizag, yeah. So
it is falling.
Yeah, recently Vizag Municipal Corporation even they're even starting to open the shacks like in Goa, in Vizag.
Okay.
So all the
That
beaches,
means they give that means the municipal corporation gives permission for
yeah,
opening up of shacks and all these
and all.
things.
They're even giving
Okay.
the tender also, most.
Tender also.
So
Okay.
all these Vizag beaches in Vizag are completely, there is no concept of private beaches in Vizag.
Okay. And the municipalities are supposed to collect taxes from them.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you can actually explore this, like what is the potential of this kind of activities and their potential contribution to the Vizag's own source revenue.
Because for its growth right now, Vizag is looking at two options. One is the tourism aspect, and one more is the IT, fintech companies and IT companies. They are trying to get a lot of investment into that from. So IT companies, I'm not sure how much they would be trying, but last week they made a big use in investment. Infosys made a big investment, but the major focus first would be on getting the tourism back on track, like how it was in pre-COVID. That is the focus. So that's the way.
No, that is fine. But please also look at a little bit more detail, like what are the different non-tax revenue components and the tax revenue components, which can also have potential to grow in Vizag. Okay.
And the reason I put up even the climate adaptation in the tools is that there has been a lot of commercialization. So Vizag is on a hilly area, like it's a
Mhm.
hilly. So there's a lot of commercialization of this hillscope colonies. Hillscope colonies are getting too congested. There's a need for decongestion of those pulses and all. Now most of these hilly region areas are being given for the new says like the new one area called Madhuravaja. It's like a hilly area and it's called Madhuravaja IT says. Their IT companies are coming up. This is again going against its climate policy adaptation in a way. That is also that is one of the reason I put up the climate adaptation is missing out there.
No, yeah. It is interesting. So please go ahead with your project and just please keep in mind some of my suggestions. So
Yeah, sure.
okay,
I've noted
sure.
that.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, sir, this was our last presentation for the day, and the rest of the
Okay.
PPTs will be taken on next Saturday. Thank you so
Okay.
much, sir, for your comprehensive and encouraging feedback on all the presentation. And a special thanks to all our fellows for sharing their excellent work. And it was truly a learning experience today. So this brings us to the end of our presentation section, and we thank Dr. Radhika Pandey and Dr. Soumati Chattopadhyay for the insightful talk with us. So this brings us to the end of day 11 of this comprehensive program. Now I would like to go ahead with the formal vote of thanks. As we come to the end of day 11 of Data Analytics for Policy Research Fellowship Cohort 2.0 and National Spring School Program of 4-month Immersive Online Hands-on Certificate Training Fellowship Program, I, Sana Ansari, researcher at IMPRI, Impacting Policy Research Institute, would like to propose a formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI Generation Alpha Data Center, New Delhi. We are grateful for our chair and expert for the day 11 session, Dr. Radhika Pandey and Dr. Soumati Chattopadhyay, for taking out their valuable time and providing thought-provoking insights on the topics. We thank all our participants who have raised important questions and actively participated in today's celebration. Reading for the session has been shared in your email, and the video of the session will also be shared for your future learning. We look forward to welcoming you on our last 12th day of this fellowship on May 3rd from 11 a.m. onwards with our session with Mr. Rakesh Pandey, Dr. Soumati Chattopadhyay. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on various podcasts or reading our publication. We hope you continue to join the future IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a very good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.